Here's the thing, civilizations across history have made imprints on our modern day world that we probably all take for granted. The wheel was invented 5,500 years ago. Romans came up with aqueducts. Heck, even the Chinese came up with printing. But what about the ones that slipped away? The ones we forgot. When people list the world's mysterious vanished civilizations, they often cite the Maya, the Indus Valley, or Easter Island. Few ever mention the Sao, an Iron Age culture that thrived around Lake Chad for nearly 2,000 years, then faded so thoroughly that Western scholars did not even learn its name until the late 19th century. Oral epics from the Kanuri and Kotoko peoples recall a legendary giant race of city builders whose artifacts lie buried beneath dunes and flood silt. Modern archaeology has confirmed that between about 500 BCE and 1600 CE, an advanced urban-leaning society occupied dozens of tells, mound sites, ringing Africa's fourth largest lake. They cast bronze, smelted iron, built defensive ramparts, and ran caravan trade routes that linked the Sahara to the rainforest belt. Yet when trans-Saharan commerce shifted and the climate swung toward aridity, the Sao dissolved into successor kingdoms, leaving no written records, only legends and enigmatic terracotta sculptures. Today, potsherds, slag heaps, and buried walls emerge when the lake recedes, hinting at a civilization that mastered its watery frontier, and then simply vanished from the historical spotlight. Unraveling their story forces us to stitch together archaeology, linguistics, oral lore, and environmental science, revealing a vibrant culture that mainstream textbooks still overlook. Lake Chad sits in the Sahel, the transition zone between Sahara Desert and Central African savanna. In antiquity, the lake was far larger. Some estimates place its surface at 25,000 square kilometers, roughly the size of modern Belgium. Seasonal floods created fertile polders and natural moats around islands and peninsulas. To the north lay Saharan caravan routes, rich in salt and copper. To the south, forest belts offered ivory, cola nuts, and slaves. This unique setting fostered cultural fusion long before written history. Paleo-environmental cores show that around 1000 BCE, the climate stabilized after a humid phase, providing predictable rainy seasons. Communities began settling permanent fishing villages, experimenting with sorghum and millet agriculture, and exploiting iron-bearing laterite nodules. Over centuries, these hamlets coalesced into the first recognizable Sao Polities, fortified mound towns positioned to tax canoe traffic and caravan crossings. Their rise coincided with a Pan-Sahelian ironworking boom, paralleling the Nok of Nigeria and Meroe of Sudan, but the Sao remained uniquely lake-oriented, blending fishing, farming, and trade into one economic package. European awareness began in 1851, when Heinrich Barth, a German explorer, recorded Kotoko legends of Sao people taller than date palms. French colonial officers later collected bronze figurines and terracotta heads dredged from polders, dubbing them Sao Kultur, after the local term for earlier inhabitants. Serious excavation waited until the 1950s, when archaeologist Marcel Griol's mission, Ched, mapped more than 40 tells near the Lagone River. Radiocarbon samples pushed the culture's origin back to at least 500 BCE, earlier than the rise of Rome. Stratigraphy revealed continuous occupation layers, lower levels of simple pottery and iron slag, middle layers of fine-corded ceramics, spindle whorls, and cowrie shells, upper horizons with brass jewelry, and imported glass beads from North Africa. By comparing thermoluminescence dates on terracotta sculptures, researchers now see two artistic peaks, one around 200 BCE, another between 1100 and 1400 CE, suggesting cultural renaissance rather than a single golden age. Sao towns typically rose atop sandy ridges just above flood level. Excavations at Gulfe and Sublamigai exposed concentric earthen ramparts up to 6 meters high, reinforced with baked clay bricks. Inside, post-hole patterns mark round huts clustered around central courtyards, grain bin platforms, and iron smelting furnaces with tuyere fragments. Animal bones show a trieconomy: lakefish, tilapia, catfish, savanna game, antelope, and domesticated cattle, dalau goats. Botanical remains of pearl millet, sorghum, and cotton seeds confirm mixed farming. Household artifacts reveal gendered labor. Spindle whorls and loom weights in domestic quarters imply textile weaving, while slag and tuyères cluster in peripheral workshops. Clay figurines, stylized crocodiles, double-headed serpents, human torsos with scarification suggest a vibrant ritual life. Some mounds hold children buried inside large storage jars beneath floors, echoing broader Sahelian mortuary customs. Population estimates vary, but the largest Sao sites may have housed 5,000 to 10,000 people. Modest by Old World standards, yet dense for the Sahel. Their defensive embankments hint at interpolity rivalry or slave raiding threats, while narrow gateways imply controlled market access. If literacy existed, it has vanished. No inscriptions have surfaced. Instead, social memory survives in epic poetry, where Sao kings wield magic spears and command hippo-mounted cavalry, metaphors that hint at real martial prowess. One hallmark of Sao ingenuity is metallurgy. Smelting furnaces at Gajigana and Damasak show slag cakes rich in bloomery iron, while tuyères exhibit vitrified clay, proving sustained high temperatures. Produced iron-fed local toolkits, hoes, harpoons, spearheads, and perhaps supplied caravan trade. More enigmatic are their copper alloy castings. Lost wax bronzes depicting riders, warriors in crested helmets, and coiled snakes. Chemical assays reveal a copper-zinc-lead mix consistent with Saharan oases ores, implying long-distance procurement. These bronzes predate famous Benin art by centuries, yet stylistically differ. Sao figures have cylindrical torsos, almond eyes, and elaborate lip plugs. Some scholars see cultural bridges between Sao, Nak, and later Kanem-Bornu craft. Iron currency bars shaped like spatulas found in later levels suggest proto-monetary exchange, while crucible fragments with glassy residues indicate experimental brass production. In effect, the Sao sat at a technological crossroads, fusing sub-Saharan iron traditions with Mediterranean bronze ideas, all without leaving textual manuals. Another reason their sophistication eluded early historians. Lake Chad was a commercial hinge between four ecozones: Sahara, Sahel, Savannah, and equatorial forest. From the north came salt slabs, copper ingots, and glass beads. From the south, ivory, cola, and exotic woods. From the east, Nile Valley textiles. From the west, gold dust via Songhai intermediaries. Kouri shells, native to the Indian Ocean, appear in Sao burials dated to the first millennium CE, proving links that spanned thousands of kilometers. Caravan archaeology is sparse, but rock art panels at Tibesti depict camel trains heading toward the lake. Islamic geographers later wrote of Balada Sudan markets, where Sao cloth and fish were exchanged for Saharan salt. Canoes carved from kapok logs ferried goods across Lake Chad, then porters or donkeys relayed them to mound towns. Such trade explains the eclectic mix of finds: glass millefiori beads from Egypt, shell bangles identical to East African types, and iron currency bars resembling those of Nak and Igbo Ukwu. The Sao were thus neither isolated nor peripheral. They mediated a pan-African economy centuries before Europeans set foot on the coast. Because the Sao left no scriptures, we reconstruct their worldview through art, ethnography, and descendant folklore. Kotoko and Buduma traditions speak of Ngalaganza, a python spirit guarding ancestral wells, and Magadugu, a warrior king turned river deity. Terracotta altars unearthed at Kuseri show snake motifs intertwined with fish and human figures, likely invoking lake fertility and flood cycles. Human burials vary, some extended supine graves with bronze bracelets, others secondary jar interments of infants, and rare skull caches within rampart walls, perhaps war trophies or ancestor shrines. Isotopic analysis of teeth indicates some individuals migrated hundreds of kilometers before death, hinting at marriage alliances or pilgrim cults. Iron bells and stone beads placed beside the deceased suggest a belief in portable wealth for the afterlife. Notably absent are clear signs of Islamic practice in early levels. Only after 1200 CE do we find Arabic glass beads and possible prayer bead strings, paralleling Islam's gradual penetration via Kanem-Bornu missionaries. Yet snake figurines persist into late horizons, implying syncretism rather than replacement. By the time written Kanuri chronicles appear in the 16th century, they portray the Sao as pagan predecessors subdued but partially assimilated, a narrative that may mask more complex cultural blending. The Sao's defensive earthworks rank among the largest in pre-colonial Africa. At Zeelam, concentric ditches enclose 12 hectares, each ditch up to 10 meters wide and 4 meters deep, backed by clay walls topped with wooden palisades. Radiocarbon dates cluster between 600 and 900 CE. Post holes on rampart crowns suggest fighting platforms, while sling stones litter the glacis. Some embankments were periodically heightened, matching phases of regional conflict documented in later Kenyan annals. Weapon finds include barbed iron arrowheads, socketed spear points, and lamellar armor scales of iron sewn onto leather, rare in West Africa. Horse remains and bronze equestrian figurines indicate cavalry, surprising given Setsi Belt south of the lake. Likely horses were stabled in drier northern zones and deployed seasonally. Oral epics describe Sao chiefs wielding magical iron staffs that spat fire. Perhaps early muskets introduced by trans-Saharan trade late in the culture's span. The purpose of such fortifications was twofold: deter rival mound towns and shield against slaving raids from the expanding Kanem Empire to the northeast. Some scholars argue that Sao ramparts inspired later Kanuri military architecture, which in turn influenced Hilsa city walls farther west, illustrating a chain of defensive innovation across the Sahel. Why did the Sao vanish? Scholars debate three overlapping factors. Hydrological change. Paleo-lake cores show a gradual drop in Lake Chad's water level after 1400 CE, reducing fish stocks and exposing towns to desert winds. Shrinking marshes undermined agriculture and canoe transport, eroding the economic base. Kanem-Bornu expansion. By the 13th century, the Kanem Empire, later Bornu, controlled caravan routes and levied taxes on Sao polities. Kanuri chronicles recount campaigns against Sao pagan towns, culminating in tribute or absorption. Military pressure likely forced population shifts. Disease and trade shifts. The introduction of Old World diseases via trans-Saharan routes or ecological stress from overfishing and overcultivation could have weakened communities. Simultaneously, new trade corridors to Hausaland and the Atlantic coast bypassed Lake Chad, draining wealth. By 1600 CE, archaeological signatures of distinct Sao pottery disappear, replaced by Kanuri-style ceramics. Yet genetic and linguistic traces linger. Many Kotoko clans claim descent from Sao Smiths. Kanuri royal regalia features serpent motifs reminiscent of Sao art. Thus, disappearance may mask gradual assimilation. Sao identity dissolved into emergent Muslim states, leaving archaeologists the task of teasing culture from continuity. Several reasons keep the Sao under the radar. No written records, absent inscriptions. Their story relies on patchy digs and oral lore, which earlier Eurocentric scholars dismissed. Remote, flood-prone sites. Seasonal inundation hampers excavation. Many mounds lie under modern villages or rebel-held zones. Competing narratives. West African history often spotlights Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires tied to trans-Saharan gold. Central Sahel polities get less press. Limited iconic monuments. Unlike Egyptian pyramids or Mayan temples, Sao architecture was earth and reeds, eroded by centuries of wind and water. Yet ongoing surveys using drone LIDAR and magnetometry are mapping buried walls without invasive trenches. Pottery sourcing studies link Sao ceramics to clays 150 kilometers away, implying regional exchange. Each new dataset pushes the Sao into broader conversations about African urbanism and technological ingenuity. The Sao civilization proves that sophisticated, long-lived societies can thrive outside the limelight of written chronicles. From 500 BCE to 1600 CE, Sao engineers sculpted mound towns, mastered iron and bronze, and brokered trade between desert and forest. Their ramparts testify to organized labor, their terracottas to a rich symbolic universe, their slag heaps to industrial scale metallurgy. Yet shifting lakes, rival empires, and evolving commerce gradually folded them into new identities, until only myths of giant ancestors remained. Rediscovering the Sao forces us to widen our lens on world history, recognizing that many cultures left faint fingerprints rather than marble monuments. As climate change, conflict, and looting threaten Sahelian archaeology, the race is on to document these submerged legacies before they vanish again, this time beneath the tides of modern neglect. In telling the Sao's story, we honor not just a lost civilization, but the mosaic of human ingenuity that flourished, traded, fought, and dreamed along the shimmering shores of ancient Lake Chad.